and Ronan Connolly. And last night, some of you watched, some of you tuned in to our interview where there was a bit of a disturbance, and unfortunately there were a few technical issues. So here we are again, we're starting from scratch. Everything seems to be working okay, and I hope that you can hear us and see us fine. We're getting the thumbs up, so that's good. So Michael and Ronan Connolly have come up with some incredibly important evidence in relation to climate change, which we're all being accused of being responsible for, and we are being told on a daily basis that if we don't bring about a scenario where there are zero carbon emissions, the planet is going to be gone in 12 years' time. Now, most of us who are sane find this hard to believe, but these two here have proven that it is not credible and that man is not having any impact on any climate change that is happening, and carbon dioxide in particular isn't. So we're going to get straight to the point, and Michael, first of all, tell me a little bit about your own background academically.
Well, from an academic point of view, I did my basic science degree in UCD way back in the 60s. Then I went on to become a teacher. Then I won a scholarship to the States, grad work. Then I came back home. I did electronic engineering. My original degree was in science. Then I converted to an electronic engineering. And then in the 80s, I went back to Trinity and did a PhD in spectroscopy. So that would be
Explain.
That's the study of how light interacts with matter. Mm-hmm. So radiation, infrared radiation, all that sort of stuff. That would be my academic qualifications, but I started life as an apprentice plasterer, and then I became an electrician, and I've done all of the different building trades. In fact, I have built a house for ourselves entirely on my own. So
like you've done all of the practical stuff and you've done all the theory.
Yes, I think we need a balance of both. There's not much point in doing one. But I've lectured in statistics, mathematics, chemistry, physics. You know, I have a wide range of expertise in a lot of topics.
Sure, okay. And you've 4 children with Imelda. Imelda's going to join us. And Ronan obviously has followed firmly in your footsteps. Ronan, your own...
I think he makes his own footsteps.
Well, he does, yeah.
So I grew up in that environment, and so when I went and did science in UCD as well, and I did, my degree was in chemistry, and with a minor in maths. Then I went and did a PhD in computer modelling, polymer physics, and in computational chemistry. And then, so one of the things that Michael didn't mention was that he moved to environmentalism.
Yes,
in the 90s,
in the 70s, I suppose.
Yes, but specifically, you're looking at the problems of water quality, water pollution, overfishing, and trying to develop trying to develop sustainable methods of fish farming, wastewater treatment, also looking at energy efficiencies and things like that.
New types of building material and heat exchanges.
So when
we have a number of patents in a lot of these areas.
Yeah. So it's important to lay out all of this, because these people are very, very well qualified, and they've been through the establishment universities, and they've been working with all of the scientists who are telling a very different story to what you have actually discovered.
So some that we've discovered are incredibly new. What we found was that there was a certain narrative that was going out there, a story about the effect of carbon dioxide on the temperature of the planet, on the greenhouse gases and that sort of thing. and they were based on a number of assumptions that weren't ever checked. And when we started checking those, it was then that we started finding problems. But before that, about 10 years ago, we had a bit of spare time, and Ronan was interested in quantifying the greenhouse effect and so on. So the first thing he said is he wanted to write a book on it back then, and he said that he would look at the data and see what the actual thing was. So he investigated.
Just explain to people what the greenhouse effect is, because this term is thrown around so often.
Basically what happened...
Well, there are many.
There are actually... We've identified 6 different theories called greenhouse effect, and not all of them agree with each other. So when you say a greenhouse effect, the first thing we have to say is, which of the things are you talking about? Are you talking about the earth having a blanket around it and being warmed by these greenhouse gases, or are you talking about radiative forcing? So there are lots of different...
Don't confuse us too much.
But
the one that they started talking about...
That's the point, is that there are several different theories that are all given the one name, and some of them contradict each other, you know. So
and everybody, when they say it, they have a different concept of what they mean by the greenhouse effect. So
anyway, let's get back down to it. So probably the one that most people are familiar with is Al Gore's blanket one, where they say the greenhouse gases form a blanket around the earth that keeps the heat in. That is the one that's the most easiest to disprove, and most of the other theories don't show that that's wrong. But that's the most popular one. So the basic idea is this. They say that greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, water vapour, methane and all that, they absorb heat given out by the air and make the air warmer, and that this is what's heating up the planet. Now, in actual fact, that's something that's very easy to check, and we have done that. But before we go into that, people are saying that the planet is getting warmer and that it's been heating up since the industrial age, and that this is all due to man emitting carbon dioxide. Now, the thing is, in looking for the greenhouse effect, there's a thing people want to know about is, how much carbon dioxide would it take to heat the planet up so much of a temperature? That's called the climate sensitivity. And the basic idea is that they say is, if we were to double the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, how much would we be heating the planet by? And there have been various theories and estimates of that. The IPCC give values somewhere between 1.5 degrees and 4.5 degrees,
with a likely value of 3.
Just so people know, the IPCC are the panel that was set up, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
And this was their last report, which you can see is quite extensive.
And it's sort of a figment of the UN's imagination, but it's what the UN refers constantly back to.
And a lot of the scientific...
And a lot of the science, yes. And the journalists.
And there were some good scientists involved in this, and some of them are friends of ours and so on. But what they're saying is that all of this was based on a certain set of assumptions. So what we started to do initially when we started looking at this, and it was mainly Ronan was starting to look at it initially, is he said, let's look, first of all, I must explain, how do we determine how the planet is getting hotter? Right? So what happens is there are different stations around the world that have been keeping temperature records going back long periods of time. For example, when we started doing this analysis in Ireland, there were 11 stations that were digitised that you could look at the data from them. And there's now a lot more, and there's good work going on to try and digitise the data, which means you can treat it on a computer. But at that time there were 11, and what we noticed is some of these were in urban areas and some in rural areas. For example, the one down in Valencia, down in Kerry, that has been in nearly the same spot since the 1800s, and has been keeping a constant temperature record there. And when we looked at the temperature record from Valencia, we found that the temperature was rising up until the 40s, then it dropped down in the 70s, and then started rising up to about 2000. But whereas if you looked at the ones in Dublin, say the one in Dublin Airport, in the 30s that was in a field. Now it's in the middle of an airport with 80 or with 20 million passengers coming through it every year. The one in Glasnevin was in a country garden. Now it's on the roof of a 3 or 4 story building in the head offices in Methern. So what we were saying is, you know, this when we looked around at all of the different stations around the world, we found similar sort of problems. Now, what Ronan instantly realises is this is causing a bias, because it's what we noticed is it's called the urban heat island effect. The urban
heat island effect. Heat island being
an area, basically. In terms of Ireland, the city of Dublin is about 1 degree warmer than the county Dublin, and the reason for that is the city takes up the concrete absorbs heat from the sun during the day,
and that's the key. That's a key issue there, that the concrete absorbs.
Whereas in the rural areas, the grass evaporates off water as it's growing, and that helps to keep it cool. So urban areas throughout the world are cooler. Rural areas are cooler than urban areas, and so when we looked at how the actual world's temperature is determined, there are a number of different station records or data sets that are used for this. But when we started analysing this back then, this was about 8 or 9 years ago, there were 7,000 stations that were being used by the IPCC and the other people to try and work out the Earth's temperature. So basically what happens is the temperature for each of these stations is the average for the year is got, and then all of those 7,000 stations, a gridded average of them was got, and then that gave you the temperature for the planet.
Okay.
And it is true, if you do that and you look at what you get, sorry about this, this is what you actually get, the top graph there. The temperatures...
You might want to move in a little bit.
The temperatures have been rising steadily. This is the average of all 7,000.
That's going back
That's in the 1800s, going all the way up here to the present day.
And that's what everyone's worried about.
And this is what people are worried about. But because over half of the stations are in urban areas, this means that there is a bias because the urban areas have been expanding over the period. So so we said this would be a bias in the data. So what we decided to do is we separated the data out into ones that were rural, and then urban and more urban sort of things. And when we did the analysis on the rural stations only, then what we got was this bottom chart. So what you can see is the temperature rose up, reached in the 40s where it reached a maximum, then it slowed down to the 70s, then it rose up again, and it's been a bit steady since 2000. So it turns out, you see, that the rural stations account for 99% of the planet, of the landmass, whereas the urban stations only account for about 1% of the global temperature.
And this was news to me, because yes. I didn't realise that only 1% of the planet, of the surface of the planet, is hold on. That one. Sorry, because I want to just. People are being told they have to give up their cars in 10 years because of this nonsense. So, but it is the case that only 1% of the surface of the Earth is urban.
Yes.
99% is
but the important point is that over half
are uninhabited. Like there's very few people living in the Arctic.
Now, just that Ireland, just take Ireland. Yeah. What percentage?
Oh, it's about
is
it depends. Galway, Cork, Dublin, they'd all be urban areas.
Yeah.
But the percentage of Ireland, there would only be 1 or 2%.
60% of the population lives in urban areas.
Yeah, but the mass of Ireland.
Yes. No. Well, all you have to do is to just get into a car and drive outside Dublin. You're in the country.
It gives people an idea.
If anyone's interested and wants to do it, there's a good thing is you can look up a map of the
lights,
night sky.
Exactly.
And then if you look at the one for Ireland, you'll see all of these big bright spots
yes,
around
a lot
the
now
city
since they introduced
areas.
the LED.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the point that I'm trying to make, however, is though the urban stations only account for a small percent of the planet, they account for most of the stations that were being recorded. So when you look at the combined temperature, including the urban stations, the temperature seems to be going through the roof. And that's because in urban areas the temperature is rising. For example, in Buenos Aires, the temperature in the urban areas is 4 degrees hotter than the surrounding areas.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah. So what we said was,
Can I just interject just in a bit here? So just to follow on a couple of points that maybe you might not have been clear. What we are finding is this is our current best estimate of what has been happening for the Northern Hemisphere, because there's almost no rural data for the Southern Hemisphere.
I'll just hold it up a little bit and then you can hold it back. Yeah.
And so the bottom one is, that's what we are finding is doing it. We just to show that we have published this in the peer-reviewed paper. This was in 2015. We've published a number of scientific articles on that. So the scientific community is starting to look and say, oh, okay, this is, but scientific community moves slowly.
Well, no, but okay,
yes,
but that's... Now what you're being very forging, but that's later on.
There are colleagues.
We have
they stab you in the back.
We're part of the scientific community, so, we have to actually, we're saying, one thing I wanted to say is that what we are showing is that we agree the climate is changing.
Yes.
We are also agreeing that it's warmer now than at the end of the 19th century, because the late 19th century was a relatively cold period. But what we're saying is it doesn't seem to be much warmer than the 1940s. And in the 1940s, carbon dioxide was basically at almost pre-industrial levels. And the IPCC would agree with that.
Because it was the pre-industrial.
That was just one. We have published quite a number of papers now since we first looked at this in 2015. We've published several papers. In fact, just 2 days ago, we were told that another one of our papers has been expected.
What is the subject matter for that?
That's looking at Chinese temperature records.
Hold on. Yeah. One person.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like building up on this, and what we're trying to do is, this was our best estimate for the Northern Hemisphere, but we're trying to build on the newer data that's coming on and to study individual regions to see if there are the different regional
Okay, and where can people read this paper? Where has it been published?
The new one is just they're just typesetting it at the moment.
It's online at the moment.
Which one are we talking about?
The Chinese, the one that just has been published.
Yeah, it's just.
By the way, that's
hold on.
But I just want to say something here. That's not all our work. Our co-authors on it. We have 4 Chinese professors. We have a colleague of ours.
So there's 8 people involved in this one as well.
So Peter O'Neill,
Earth Science Review.
Peter O'Neill from UCD.
I'll tell you what. If anybody wants to check I have like a personal website, RonanConnollyScience.wordpress.com, and there's links to all of that on that. So, RonanConnollyScience.wordpress.com.
And
if you go there, and there is the links of all of the peer-reviewed
and you've
papers.
Given lots of talks, but not in this country, because you're not allowed. You're verboten like me. We're all gagged.
I would say we're not allowed. We're just ignored.
Not for much longer. Now let's get. So Okay, carbon dioxide is not causing this climate change.
That is, all of this results here just simply says that natural climate change is a much bigger effect on the climate than people have realised. But that didn't answer the question, is carbon dioxide or are the greenhouse gases having any sort of effect on the atmosphere and on our temperatures? So for that we needed to look at a different set of data. So when we knew that you had things like the urban heat island effect bias, and there are a lot more, when we started going through the data, we found, for example, there's sighting biases. You have weather stations that are put between beside air conditioning vents.
Not intentionally so. It's that somebody installs an air conditioning vent beside, like a few metres away from it.
Or stations are moved to one other location because they're now going to put in a car parking space or something else like that. So there are all sorts of biases. The sighting bias is another paper we're working on now at the moment with a number of other international co-authors. But I kind of lost track. What I was trying to say is, when we realised there were all these biases, we said, is there any other set of data that we could look at that hasn't got a bias in it? And we looked and we said, we realised there was all the weather balloon data. Now what happens is, all around the world since about the 1950s, about the geophysics year in 1950s, people have started to release weather balloons and a weather balloon is a balloon that goes up through the atmosphere and takes samples takes samples of the temperature, the pressure, the humidity as it goes up, and it travels up to about 25 to 35 kilometres before it bursts. It takes about 90 minutes for it to do this, but it sends back all this information on the temperature and so on. And there have been over 20 million of these weather balloons launched with all that data stored and retrieved over the last 50, 60 years. And what we realised then is that the data from this shouldn't be affected by urban biases or by sighting biases. So we said, let's have a look at this and see what's actually happening in the atmosphere. And when we started to analyse that, which we did in a way that nobody else had thought of doing before.
Explain.
Well, what had happened is most people just look at the temperature, the pressure and the relative humidity and the wind speed and direction and that. But we realised that if you rearranged the equation of state, which is called the ideal gas laws, but I don't want to get into the technicalities of it, but it's in our papers, it's on our website, so anyone that's interested in that. But we rearranged that in a different way, which plotted the molar density as a function of the pressure as you go up through the atmosphere. And the molar density is very useful for explaining chemical processes and the behaviour of material in that. And when we did that, what we said is, initially I was looking to see if we could use this to quantify the effect of all of these greenhouse gases. And the results of our analysis says there is no effect. It turned out that in the models and in all the theories that were there, it was assumed that each layer in the atmosphere was isolated thermodynamically, which is a technical term, from the layers below it. But when we actually came along and we looked at the balloon data, it turned out that that wasn't true. So what it meant was that the atmosphere was in what's called thermodynamic equilibrium, and that automatically means that you can't have a greenhouse effect, because way back in 1917 Einstein had shown that if a gas was in thermodynamic equilibrium, then the rate at which the greenhouse gases absorbed the energy was equal to the rate at which they emitted. So a greenhouse gas is something that absorbs heat energy. But all greenhouse gases, as Einstein had shown, is if they can absorb energy at a certain frequency, they automatically emit it at that frequency as well. So if you increase the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, you increase the rate at which they absorb the infrared radiation.
That's
but simultaneously, if it's in thermodynamic equilibrium, you also increase the rate at which it emits the radiation. So the net effect is nothing. So if you take carbon dioxide in the 15 micron region that everybody's worried about, it absorbs energy and it holds onto it for 313 milliseconds, less than a third of a second, before it emits it again. And so if you double the rate of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, you do double the rate of absorption, but you also double the rate of emission, except for a 1/3 of a second delay. And in terms of centuries of climate change, that's not...
Whoa, hold on, because I just don't want us getting too technical.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just
well, if you're not going to be technical. Because like that, for the lay person, that was a lot for people to absorb.
That's what I wanted to point out, is that the work we were describing earlier about the urban heat islands, we've published that in peer-reviewed journals. The peer review process, which is in academic stuff, if you want to publish this for the scientific community, it takes months and months. So we have the results that Micah was describing. We put all of our early analysis up online in 2014, and you can access that on that website I was saying. You'll find links to it on ronandconleyscience.wordpress.com. We also have a talk that we gave in Tucson, Arizona in July, where we described that work. If anybody wants to look at it, it's an hour-long talk, and that's also linked there. And I'll just put in another point, is that some of the newer work is that we're still writing that up for formal peer review. But we have discussed this data and our analysis with hundreds of scientists around.
That talk that was given in Tucson was before 200 PhDs and medical doctors, so it wasn't your typical audience. They would have been familiar. There was,
when you first published the data in relation to the city, urban versus city, or the urban versus rural. So you presented that. What was the reaction within the scientific community?
Wait until she asked her question.
What
was the reaction within the scientific community?
So what actually happened was a number of other... When the scientific process is quite simple. If you come up with something that you think is a problem, you then highlight and alert the scientific community and say, is there something wrong with what we're doing? Is there a problem with our analysis? And so we got all quite good positive feedback from China. And within about an hour was putting up, we had Chinese professors ringing us up and saying this. But we also got contacted by Willie Soon in the Harvard Smithsonian in Boston.
Now, he's been a guy that...
But the point about it was, he said he had been looking at the solar energy, the energy that's been put out by the sun. Now, most people might think that the sun gives out a constant energy all the time, but it doesn't. It goes through cycles, which are called solar cycles. There are times when the activity goes up and then it drops down. It has an average cycle for sunspot behaviour of about 11 years. It varies between 8 and 12, but on average, every 11 years it goes through these cycles. But superimposed on that 11-year cycle, there are also cycles that go back over 50, 60 years, and we've noticed ones going back. There's a time called the Maunder minimum in the 1700s.
The Maunder minimum, which I speak a lot about, but can I interrupt you here and say that is what is causing climate change?
Well, what we noticed here...
The solar activity, perfectly normal.
This is the dotted line here on this graph shows one of the estimates of how the solar activity behaves. That's the small dotted black line. And you can see our line on the red and blue lines shows the rural temperature record. Now you can see they seem to be a reasonably good fit.
They're a far better fit than carbon dioxide or greenhouse.
Yes.
So in other words, what we're saying is one of the solar estimates actually show that the natural variability in the sun could account for all of these cycles. But I must put in a caveat.
Did you hear that now?
I must put in a caveat.
The sun is to blame.
No,
the sun.
Well, I'm putting in a caveat here.
There's nothing wrong with the sun. We need it. That's why they're dimming the sun with the don't agree.
As a scientist, I have to put in caveats, warnings and things. That is one of the solar estimates that are out there. There were, when we were doing this, altogether 8 different published solar outputs. The top one here shows 4 of these different estimates of the sun's output. And here we show 4 ones that give a different estimate.
Yeah.
Now,
they were the ones the IPCC used.
Those are the ones the IPCC used. So they were saying, if we assume that the sun's output is flat, then the sun can't account for the natural variability, which is a kind of a circular argument. But if you look at, say, the other published data that says the output isn't flat, then you can't make that claim. And so what we're saying is one of these outputs is in actual fact a good fit for the rural stations, and that was published in 1915
or in 2015
in Earth Science Review, which was when we submitted that for publication. The editor asked us, would we mind taking it back out again and sending it to a number of other professors around the world to give an independent thing before it was submitted through the formal Earth Science Review. And we did that, and we got nothing but positive. One of the professors to go down like a lead balloon in some circles, but it was then resubmitted and it was then published, and within about an hour you had people shouting to the editor to take it down, get rid of this. But he said, no, this is the most peer-reviewed article that we have
published. The editor also did go and say, look, there were some people from advocacy groups, because they went and contacted and say, how dare you publish this work from people that don't agree with the consensus. And he said, the editor said to them, oh, if you found any scientific errors, you are welcome. We would encourage you to formally submit your scientific critique of what they have found.
And nobody has submitted.
And nobody did. They just went
and they've had 4 years to do that.
This is just criminal. It's criminal, in my opinion.
It's not criminal.
No, it is criminal because, as I said earlier when I was speaking to on Facebook, as we speak, children in schools all around this country are being told by their teachers, you're responsible for the fact that the planet is going to end in 12 years and you've got to do something about it. In my opinion, I know you are much kinder than I am, but that is child abuse, because a child cannot deal with that. This is their home. This is their planet. This is where we are producing a generation of traumatized children. And Imelda's going to talk about that in a little while. But also, our farmers are being persecuted. The people who produce our food are being persecuted over all of this fraudulent science, and they're being told the way we are going to be taxed into oblivion. People are going to be taxed more and more and more, and for all of the reasons, they're being made to feel guilty as soon as they get out of bed in the morning, based on a lie, and that to me is criminal. And the whole of humanity is being, the third world is being denied the opportunities that we have had in the West in terms of use of fossil fuels, etc. They're being denied that. So
I just can I just to add in a little bit here on this, so we can talk about that separately, but I want to distinguish that we have the scientific community, we have the general public, we have the media, we have the politicians, and then there's advocacy groups, NGOs. And what I want to say is that it's very easy to tar everybody with the same brush. and there are a few bad eggs.
It's not easy. It's like
If you just there are bad eggs in a few different places, but there's a lot of good eggs in a lot of these things. So what we are trying to do, so on the scientific community, bear in mind that the better scientists actually take their time and consider what they're going to say. And when they realize they might have made mistakes, they go and they say, oh, I'll check this a bit slower. So for those in the public that are looking and saying, why aren't you hearing stuff from the scientific community, except you hear scientists on saying, oh, it's all saying the same thing they've been saying forever. You bear in mind that the scientists that are more interested in promoting scientific inquiry, they take a bit longer. So
they didn't take very long with this nonsense, though.
No, but
they didn't.
Can I tell you?
Even though the evidence was there.
Well, you see, they didn't have this. That one was in 2013. This is published in 2015.
I know, but I'm talking about.
Can I tell you, there is a problem with science at the moment. It's a problem, and it's not as people. There's a battle going on, and it's not between good science and bad science. Scientists can take care of bad science. The big problem we have at the moment is between science and advocacy groups and marketing groups. And this is the thing: marketing groups are only interested in promoting their product or their clients' products, and there is a problem at the moment in that. For example, if somebody comes along and says that A is good and B is bad, then a person that's trying to promote their brand will align themselves with the one that's said to be good. So they will say, I'm in favour of this, I promote that, my product helps to encourage this good behaviour or this good thing. But what I'm just trying to say is...
I don't agree with that. This is the UN, which is a communist, or it's a communist ideology.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the problem that science has at the moment. It doesn't matter whether A is good or bad. Marketing groups will go for A because it increases their brand recognition and makes them look like a good product.
Even if you're bringing all of humanity back to the Stone Age. Hang on, Ronan, for a second. Yeah. Hang on. Okay, so but that's neither here nor there in a way, because I believe that it's not marketing. I believe that it is an ideology that is being pushed in order to bring us back.
It's the same thing.
Control.
It's an advocacy group that are marketing their particular things. They're using marketing techniques.
But they have an agenda which is about control.
Can I just add in a bit of information that you maybe weren't aware of? And so this is the thing, is because like the UN, you see when you hear coverage of this in the media of like climate change, it's presented as if there is the science is settled and game over. It's everything is all been established, and what I'm saying is that in the scientific community,
that's not the case.
That's not the case. Now I need to add in a bit. There's a shift in the scientific community. In the scientific community, there are some scientists that are more interested in looking at computer model output. And it's very popular. And my PhD was in computer modelling, so I come from that background. In the computer model world, global warming is man-made. It's entirely due to CO2 and methane and all of these things. In the model world, in the computer model world, we've been looking and saying, how does the computer model world compare with reality? And in that, we're finding that those results are doing it.
Okay, so, I need you to explain that to people, though, because they don't know. When you say computer models, that's all very abstract.
Okay.
What we were talking about last night and today as well about, for example, you were saying UCD does not have a department of chemistry anymore.
Well, there used to be a separate department of chemistry.
I think they've rebranded.
It got into financial difficulties, and they've rebranded it in another way.
I
but
think
there
it's-
isn't a department now called the chemistry department anymore. When I was young, or when I was doing my chemistry degree back then, there was. But
And the point I'm making is that, like,
throughout
you
the
do all
world,
the
it's not just
physical
UCD,
experiments.
yes.
Yeah.
You're out in the atmosphere.
Oh, yeah.
You're testing, doing,
Yeah.
and you're in your labs. It's just
We often
kids
hear-
today doing science
we
are not
often
doing.
hear-
It's all on the computer.
Yeah.
We
Is that
often
the
hear
point?
this put
Yeah.
out by advocacy groups that we've only one planet and we can't do experiments on it. That's a nonsense.
Yeah.
As we've shown from the 20 million radio balloons that have been spent up into the atmosphere 70 years, million experiments. So it's nonsense. We can actually do experiments. We can make measurements. We can establish facts. But so the IPCC and all of those advocacy groups rely entirely on models, on computer outputs for their predictions
Yes.
and what they believe is there. And what we're saying is, whereas computer models are helpful, as Ronan has just pointed out, that's what his PhD was in, they aren't. You have to validate them. You have to go and see, how does this model compare with the real world?
Yeah,
And
okay.
that's what has been lacking.
I'll just might make a bit some others. If we went on the financial model world, we never would have had a recession in 2009.
Well, now, exactly.
You know, so the models you get. There's a saying in computer science that, you know, garbage in, garbage out. If you put in garbage, you'll get garbage out. And so into the models, into your computer programs. So the
Hang on, just on that, there is a standard joke that was put out by Jasper Carden.
Oh no,
also.
it wasn't Jasper.
Well, what they're saying is, however, once the garbage has gone through an expensive computer, the results become ennobled.
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
can't actually criticise them.
That's the thing. Exactly.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
just I think it is important to say that this IPCC report is about 2/3 of it is based on computer models, and some of the stuff is describing the fact that the climate is changing. We're not disputing that. We're saying that the climate is changing.
It's what's causing it.
The saying it's human caused comes from looking at the computer models.
So can we bring it back now?
Okay, so just a little bit on that.
Yeah.
We decided when we had our rural temperature records and that, we said, how does the computer models predict this? And if you got the hindcast there that shows, we compared the computer models with the actual real data.
Okay.
And then when
this
you
is
look,
what the models say should have occurred over the same period. If you can scroll. So they show this dramatic warming that's continually going up and up from I think that's 1850.
Can people see that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and that's what the model world. That's what happened in the model world.
so if you believe the models are correct, then you would be saying it's proven global warming takes place.
Yeah.
It's without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay.
But if you look at the actual measured data, you find that it doesn't correspond to that.
What
at
we
all.
were saying is that all of your listeners, viewers, Gemma,
I've just turned off.
Yeah, but they actually are living in the real world, not inside the computer world. They're not living in a computer simulation. So, you know,
In the bubble.
Yeah. So this
In the
is
bubble.
the thing is that then you might
All
have
our science is based on analysing data and asking what's the data saying.
Yeah.
We look at models as a way of coming up with ideas to test, but all that we do is look at the real data. And when we say the real data, when we're saying that there is no greenhouse effect, what we're saying is the real data is saying that carbon dioxide, there are greenhouse gases and that, but they don't warm the planet.
All right. Hold on, we need
yeah.
to reduce the carbon emissions here for a minute. From
yeah.
you two.
Yes.
Just for 1 second, because I need people to be able to.
Yes.
Now, there'll be some from my mouth. You see, the point I want to make is that this idea, this thesis of yours in relation to the urban-rural is so simple.
Yes.
That a 4-year-old could understand it.
Well, we've all 20/20 vision in hindsight.
But the scientific community they're not, you know, saying, hang on a minute, hold on media, hold on UN, we may have something here which a 4-year-old could understand. Maybe these guys are actually correct. So before we start taxing people into oblivion, before we start, you know, saying no more oil drilling, or, you know, before we start switching off the lights, let's test this. And it looks like they're right. So why haven't they done that?
That's what I was trying to say earlier on. What's not realised in the general public and those who aren't in the scientific community is the incredibly slow rate at which scientists communicate.
Okay. So we're not going to agree on that point. Can I ask? We've covered that. No, you're going to defend the scientists, and I can't allow that because that is wrong, in my opinion. That's false.
Okay, can I?
They do not deserve to be defended.
Okay, so
because a 4-year-old can understand this.
Yes, I know that it's there.
City warm, field cool.
Yeah.
City warm, field cool. All of the most of the weather stations are, so it's so easy. The scientific world are behaving fraudulently and immorally, and they are the ones that should be jumping up and down, saying to the media,
well, we're part
sorry
of the scientific
guys,
word as well.
And you are jumping up and down.
So you are
but
hearing.
And there are other people.
We're not hearing you.
No, you're not hearing us.
We're not.
But that's because the media aren't reporting us. But that doesn't mean we aren't out there shouting up and down.
No, you are, and that's
and there are loads of others.
Let's talk about and stop being so nice to them all, because they don't
it's
serve.
not to all of them.
No,
That's
okay.
the point.
There are some people.
They would stab you in the back. They would literally
Gemma,
listen. They've called me a Nazi. Hold on. They've called me somebody who has something to do with the deaths of 6 million people because I speak out about this. They would have both of you murdered like that. They would. They are so dangerous, these people. And so what they have done is, we will have them silenced. We will not pay any attention to them, and hopefully they will go away. Yeah. But you're not going away. Now, but just let me ask you, the ways that they've tried to silence you in terms of, okay, RTE, you should be on prime time every week.
First thing that I want to say is that you're looking at two different things. If you look at the scientific community, where we go around the scientific community, where it's Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and we've gone to all these places.
Cambridge.
Everybody, all the scientists welcome us in. They talk to us, and they agree, and we exchange ideas and that sort of thing. And so what I'm saying is, we're not ostracized in the scientific community. But when you come to the media, now that's not quite true, because when we went and gave that talk in Tucson, we were also asked to give a talk in another well-known Ivy League university, and when we were leaving Tucson to go to this other place, we were told that some of the students had organised protests and said that if we gave the talks on the campus, there would be huge protests. So they then said that in order to get the increased security, they would need another £7,000. Now, the people who had invited us and were sponsoring that, they said that was okay, that they would look after that. But again, there was other difficulties. So in the end, because it was such a short time scale, we actually had to move off the campus and give the talk in a church hall.
A church.
Which I thought was funny, because we were going from a place that was supposed to have liberal discussion to giving a talk in an area that's renowned for its dogma. But that's an irony. But that was actually...
Christianity gave us free thought. But anyway, people don't like to appreciate that.
But the thing was that talk was very well attended, and there were one or two people who, after towards the end of the talk, got up and staged a walkout, but the vast majority listened and were very appreciative of what we were saying.
Yeah, but you won't name that university, where would be screaming it from the rooftops.
There is a good possibility that we'll get back there, and
but that university should be shut down, in my opinion, because it's denying. You can't.
So you see, the thing is, there are always in a given organisation there are good people, and then there are people. The problem that's happening is that there are some people that have put themselves into positions of power in a lot of these institutions, which and they are those people that are trying to shut down scientific inquiry. They're causing problems. And so that's why because I've talked we've been reaching out to people, and we're finding a lot of people in the scientific community, in the institutions, in the media, a lot of the people do want, when they find out that there's
stop. I'm not. No, so, we're not. No.
So
all that we're doing is giving you our experience.
You're being far too easy.
We're giving our experience.
This is our.
It's not the job of journalists to be nice. It's the job of the media to tell the public the truth.
Well, I agree with you,
I'm sorry.
100%
Can I finish this point?
Yes.
It sickens me to the core that people, I'm not saying you, people make excuses for people in RTE or in the Irish Independent, the Times. But sure, they're paying their mortgages, and God love them, it's not their fault. They go to their editors, they say there's two great scientists in Ireland. They are at the forefront of this. They're getting incredible recognition internationally, and the editors say no. And I know how it.
Well, that has happened with us.
I know how it works because I worked in the mainstream media myself. Most of the time, it was fine because we had an independent editor, lowercase. But then Dennis O'Brien took over, and within a matter of weeks, everything changed. So I know how it works. It is the job of the journalist to then say, right, you are denying the public the truth. I am no longer a journalist. I'm a spin doctor. I am not going to do this anymore. I'm going to walk out, and we're going to shut down the printing press. We're going to shut down RTE tonight. We're not going to go into work, and we're going to stand outside and picket. That's what they should be doing, but they're not. Sorry.
Okay. No, Gemma, you're right.
You tell us about RTE, because I asked you that 10 minutes.
We were contacted. For example, there was a primetime debate a number of years ago in which we were asked if we would present some of this data here and that sort of thing, and argue in favour of why carbon dioxide wasn't killing the planet. So we said yes, we would go. We arrived in there at time. There was supposed to be a balance. Friends of the Earth, John Sweeney from Maynooth, myself and Ronan and Ray Bates were supposed to be on the other side. John Sweeney, just before the thing went live, John Sweeney and the Friends of the Earth withdrew and said that they weren't going to be part of
the science was settled.
They weren't going to have a debate. They went back into the audience, and we were relegated to the audience because the producer felt that you couldn't have a biased, one-sided thing. So we never got to give our presentation.
It's so convenient that you're paying their wages. John Sweeney is funded by you guys. Friends of the Earth is funded by you guys, and RTE is funded by you. But they made a conscious decision to shut the whole thing down because they were not going to be able to argue against you.
On the matter of funding, let me make it clear, all of our research was entirely funded out of our own pocket.
Same with me.
We didn't get any funding for this. We do it because we're passionate about science. So this is now we have to make living in other ways, but the science, all this science is done on our own nickel.
I'll just say to follow up on what you're saying and show, science progresses by scientific inquiry. Whenever you have people that are saying we cannot have any more scientific inquiry because the science is settled, or whatever you're saying, or all the scientists that we are presenting to you disagree, then that's not saying that's shutting down scientific inquiry. And the media should be welcoming scientific inquiry. And even if you felt that if you disagree with our scientific results, the science progresses by having discussion.
As all fields.
Yes.
The law. Everything, philosophy, if we stop inquiring as human beings, we stop to evolving.
One of the things that might surprise people, but if someone comes along and demonstrates to me that I am wrong, I actually am delighted because now I say I've learned something new, and it gives me more to go on and explore more. I don't think there's any harm in being wrong. What's the harm is if you're pointed out that you're wrong. It's what you do about it. So if someone pointed out to me and showed me that I was wrong, I'd put my hands up and say I'm wrong.
It's the greatest thing you can do as a human. Philos love, Sophia wisdom.
Well, that's the whole point. That's what I'm a PhD, Doctor of Philosophy. It says I teach the love of knowledge, and that's what my entire career has been. But
Gemma, like you're the same thing that you're experiencing with like people shutting you down on different channels. It's the same thing as wrong. There's a lot of things that I disagree with you and you disagree with or whatever. But the way to get things better is to have discussions. So if the way in which we can get a consensus or everybody agreeing is to shut down everybody that disagrees with you, you're not helping things.
Absolutely. But you see, you might say, "Oh, I disagree with you on X, Y, or Z." All I am doing is I am allowing people like you to have your voices heard. There are a lot of people, for example, who are very concerned about vaccine safety.
Right.
Now, if you raise this, they have made up their minds. The cabal, the elite, the powers that shouldn't be. Vaccines are safe. Vaccines are safe. When we say anything is safe, we stop it from being made safer. Because the media constantly criticise me. I will always say, are vaccines safe? Because by saying that, you make them safer. It's like with food. Is this food safe? When you question and question and question, you always make something safer. That's why this shutting down of thought and questioning is so dangerous.
When you're talking about that, let me give you an example of the nonsense that goes out there. We have this whole thing about electric cars being clean and everything else. That's a total nonsense. I am shocked at our Taoiseach, our Department of Transport, coming along and saying we're going to have 1 million cars in the next 10 years, by the next 10 years or whatever. If you actually look at the worldwide production of electric cars, at its capacity at the moment, they're producing 4.5 million.
That's the total in the world.
And the total. If what our Taoiseach and what our government are proposing, that we're going to take a quarter of all the electric car capacity over the next 10 years, and we're going to do that, a little population of 4 million or 5 million out of the total of the 7,000 million people. That's a nonsense there for several reasons. One, I'm a chemist and I happen to know a fair bit about batteries, and I know a lot about car batteries. And the new ones that are there. And one of the key thing in all of these electric cars is they need an element to make them rechargeable. They need an element called cobalt. And if you look at cobalt, 2/3 of the cobalt that's mined in the world at the moment comes from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And there's over 30 to 40,000 child labourers being used to extract this particular thing. I think it's 8 of the main cobalt companies that are owned by the Chinese, but that's an astute move on their behalf, because cobalt is now classified as one of the precious or key components that's needed. But there's a problem with cobalt, and that is this. Once we get these batteries, put them into the cars and everything else like that, and the car works well, then when the battery dies, when it becomes corroded, that sort of thing, you have a problem of how to get rid of these batteries. No consideration has been taken into that at all. But the entire nonsense that they put out there that Ireland, a little country of 4 million people, should be taking a quarter of the entire world's production of electric cars. And in order to do this, we are using children in the Congo to extract this metal, and there's a huge shortage of it. 2/3 of it all comes from the Congo, so some from Canada and that sort of thing. But the price has rocketed to 300% in the last few years with the bringing on of the electric cars, and it has increased the number of child labourers being used in these Congo mines to take this out. And I think for people who say they're looking to cause social equity and that, this is the biggest thing that should be on their
fraud.
conscience.
I mean, this is absolutely criminal.
Can I just, because I thought that you would have mentioned following on the point, so and I want to follow up on the point that you were making, but just because I know I should say like that there are things that we disagree, just to do it on the vaccines. What I would say is I agree with you that people should be able to instead of that's what I'm saying with scientific inquiry. My assessment is that most of the time that a lot of the ones are not as bad as the people that are worried about vaccines are. But I think what you're saying about it should be safe, like that people should be
and
doing
you should
it.
query
You shouldn't criticise me because
no, we're not criticising you for doing your job.
I haven't no, you should criticise, but I haven't finished my sentence, so you don't know. Okay. You shouldn't criticise me because I'm giving people like you who are specialists in vaccine science the opportunity to speak. That does not make me
we agree entirely with you.
All
you should be doing that.
I am only giving other people the opportunity, and then I make up my own mind, which is my prerogative. But it doesn't make me a racist or a Nazi because I say the Irish should not become a minority in their own home. We've one tiny island for us to preserve our culture and heritage. That does not make me a racist. Maybe you think it does, but it doesn't.
Gemma, that's exactly what I was saying. Like, there's the British philosopher John Stuart Mill said, if you only know your side of the argument, you don't even know that. That was in the 19th century. And that's what I'm saying. There should be people that disagree with somebody. You should discuss it with them. You shouldn't say we disagree with this view, so anybody that disagrees with us is deplatformed. You can't do it. That is the exact opposite of what you should be doing.
What you should be doing is listening to the people that disagree with you.
The other thing is,
service by.
Look, do you know what? I've got to the point, and I've been like this generally most of my life. I actually don't care what other people think about me, because the only person I am answerable to is that man above.
Right.
And so many people in this country care about how will it be perceived, or what will people think, and they go with the herd, and that's why the country's in the mess that it's in. So I actually don't care. I don't want to hurt anyone, but at the end of the day, all I can do is my job and try and get as many views out there as possible. But I do think that is a problem, that people care so much about what other people think.
Well, that's what I find, that in most of the people who are doing the footfall and out there promoting all these green agendas and that, they actually have the planet in the good position of the planet in their heart. But the people who are directing them and who are organising it for their own vested interests, those I disagree with. But they don't care that I disagree.
I also just to say on this that if your arguments on any issue are very compelling, then you should have no fear about in discussing it with somebody that you disagree with, because you should have the confidence to say, the facts are on my side, I know what I'm talking about, come on, have at it.
Absolutely.
Come on. So that's what I'm saying. we should be encouraging more scientific inquiry,
and all sorts of inquiry and everything,
especially about the things that we are adamant about. Because they're the ones, if you are absolutely 100% sure that you're correct on something, then you should be welcoming it. You
should try and convert people,
because you should be able to show how wrong the other people's arguments are.
And Melda, at this point, Melda is so patient, and Mum is going to join us, because we have been speaking.
We're falling apart here. She always.
No, we're she'll bring us back.
Here.
No, but what is great, we are going to be watch. Okay, so what we're going to be doing, we're going to be talking a lot more. Thankfully, the Connollys have agreed to do more regular interviews with me, because there's so much. Melda.
Did we agree that?
Yeah, you did. Well, we'll definitely do another one. We're going to do a Q&A over the next week or so that people can actually ask direct questions, and we can find out what people want to know about. So this is just the beginning. I would, as I say, the Connollys should be on all of the Irish mainstream media, because their discoveries are so important, but it looks like that they are being shunned, and that these are just the facts. Now, Melda, how are you? You're so
well.
patient.
Thank you.
And you keep these boys under check.
Well, try to.
You try to.
It's a bit hard.
But you're also a teacher, as we learned last night.
I was a teacher, yes.
And a scientist.
And so on. Yes, I have a PhD in computer-mediated communication and 2 masters and so on. But I've been particularly concerned about the role of green schools in
the green schools, yes.
In Ireland. They originally, I think it was 1992 at the UN conference in Brazil. In Rio, eco schools were set up, and that's the founding body, and out of that came green schools. And the original aim of the eco schools was to develop critical thinking. So you would expect, if that aim is carried on through the green schools, that children in school would be presented with at least 2 sides of an argument. They would be told there are some people who believe that the earth is warming. There's some that do not. There's some people that think the polar bears are dying. There's others that show that there's 50,000 polar bears there at the moment. Let the children see facts.
There's some people who believe that men can't have babies.
Exactly. But let them see the facts for themselves, so that they can judge it. But in actual fact, from examining the programme for the green schools, it's completely an IPCC based program, or even worse.
Yeah.
But the thing is this as well, that it's putting a huge amount of responsibility on children from as young as 4 in their junior infants class right up through, making them
what
feel.
What are junior infants being taught here now?
Well, they're being told that the earth has a blanket around, like a blanket around it, and it's heating up, and that we have to do things to reduce the carbon dioxide. Otherwise, things will happen. There'll be flooding, the icebergs will melt, and so on. And so children are being told to do things to change the climate, and that is an impossibility for children to do, and it's a huge responsibility. They're being told to collect plastic, to not go in the car, to not go on airplanes, to do this, to do that. They're being told to cycle to school, say, or walk to school. It's called WOW or SOW, or scoot to school, which is SOW, and so on. But they're being told to do that to save the planet. Why not tell the children to walk to school for their health?
Yeah.
It's a good thing to do, to go to school, walking, to cycle to school if you want to scoot to school, to do whatever it is. And if you go in the car, it's not a big calamity. Don't make children feel guilty about it. And if they have a plastic bottle, don't make them feel guilty. They're not responsible for the climate.
What effect is this having on children?
From reports that I've seen, and I haven't studied all the details of it, but there's a huge increase in children being depressed worried about things.
Anxiety.
And I feel that a lot of this is this feeling that the earth we've only another 11 years or 12 years to go before we could die. Now that's a huge responsibility to put on children, and to make them feel that they can do something to change it when it's impossible. So that's a failing that they're going to have. They're going to be saying, there's a storm out there, that means I didn't do enough to help. And children are gullible, they're innocent, they look to their teachers, they look to their parents for advice on what to do and guidance. And if they are being told this is what's happening and they have to do something, then they are going to start trying to do something. And they are collecting rubbish, they are protesting, stopping school on Fridays to try and support this movement, and so on. And all of these things, children feel empowered by doing it, but it's an empowerment that's going to fail because there is nothing they can do for the climate. And we, from our research, know that carbon dioxide has no effect on the climate. So all this saving, even if it was, I wouldn't inflict it on small children. No. Whatever about teenagers.
They only have one childhood, and it is ridiculous to be making them feel guilty. And making them worried about
and make them worried. And some children are.
We may not be able to hear you there.
You don't have the mic on it. So just to say what Michael was saying that we only have one childhood. So if you're taking somebody's childhood away by making them feel that the end is nigh.
Yes.
That's gone for their
that's it.
And then do we know what the effect of raising 97% of schools in primary schools in Ireland are green schools? Right? And it's even spreading now into the third level. But if you have all the children in Ireland being taught in this way, that there's a disaster around the corner, it's a huge responsibility on them. And they're not going to be able to do anything about it. Is this going to lead to a lot of depression in the future generations? How are they going to, psychologically, how are they going to cope with it? We don't know. This is an experiment that society is doing. And this is
adults that are imposing this on the children.
Yes. Absolutely. We don't know the results of it.
Here in Ireland, we
Where are we?
Okay, sorry.
Can I ask you, Melda, before Michael comes back in?
Yeah.
What can parents do? Parents don't realise the power that they have. They could make it very difficult for schools if they wanted to.
I suppose they could. I suppose if people are aware that there is another side of the argument, I think this idea from the IPCC that the science is settled and that 97% of scientists approve of this information is very false. It's wrong. And because that is the impression given, ordinary parents just say to themselves, well, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. 97%.
But you don't need to be a scientist.
No, but if you believe 97% of scientists believe this, and you haven't queried whether that's a correct statement or not, and it isn't true. But if you will pass on, you will go with that information. If the children come home and say the earth is increasing in temperature, we've to stop producing carbon dioxide, we've to stop driving the car, and so on, then they won't know what to say.
Can I just say one thing? I disagree in a way with that, because I think regardless of what the science says or doesn't say, if a child is being told terrifying things in school, the responsibility is on the parent to go into the school and to say, stop terrifying my child. Stop telling my child that she is a boy when she is clearly a girl. Stop telling my son to wear a dress to school. He's wearing all of these, True. So that's what parents need to do.
No, you asked a specific question.
Yeah.
And I'm not going on to the transgender debate around. I'm just confining myself to climate.
It's part of the same picture, but terrifying.
You're asking what the parents can do.
Yeah.
Well, the bottom line is this. at the moment, there's approximately 3 million being donated or given from various government organisations to Antashka. And Antashka was supposed to be an organisation that was looking after the heritage of the country. But it has been hijacked by progressives, and so most of the funding is now going into the Green Schools campaigns. And we're talking around 3 million last year. And they're an advocacy group that are pushing a progressive green agenda and not actually protecting the heritage of the country. So that if you're saying what can they do, well, there's two things you can do. First of all, tell your headmistress and that to kick out this organisation out of the school. Say you don't want anything to do with this green flag, which has nothing to do with climate or anything else like that. It's nearly there to promote a progressive social agenda, and that shouldn't be. We shouldn't be allowing.
Well, what's the other thing you were
the other thing is you go to your local TDs and you tell them stop spending our money on other people's social campaigns. You know, put it into the schools for new computers or something else like that, or green flags and that. The other
and don't present only one side of a position. We know it's wrong, but there should at least be balance so the children have some possibility of critical thinking. If they're just presented with facts as if it's absolute, they have no way of judging.
Can I just say,
yes.
Would you agree, like from an educator perspective,
yes.
would you agree that like actually encouraging the discussions in scientific inquiry, get people, use that as a teaching experience, to actually, you know, teachers should be saying, oh look, here is the different things, why don't we discuss this in the class, particularly at the teen or like in the secondary school level.
Secondary school, at primary level, I have seen provided with the green schools cartoons and so on, jeering people who are skeptics about the whole climate change debate, and I think it's a very biased programme, and it's in every school in Ireland, 97%, and it's promoting a particular agenda, and I don't think we should have that.
Yeah, and I mean this use of this child, Greta Thunberg, you know, who is starting to have a little bit of a meltdown herself now because she is a child, and so many people are calling her out, and the agenda that is driving her, and people.
She herself has special needs.
And she does. But now it's like, oh, if you criticise her, you're bullying a child who has special needs. So, you know, you can't win.
But I think that because she has special needs, people should be more careful for her. I mean, that's what I'm saying when I'm saying she has special needs.
But it's so clever of them to have chosen a child to drive this, and children are
but I
sucked
feel
in.
If you take an ordinary family and you have a teenager, you would not look to them to tell you where to go on holidays, what to do, what a mortgage to get, whether we should move house and so on. Why are we looking to teenagers, a teenager among others, to guide the whole country? The amount of
the whole world.
The whole world. The amount of politicians I've heard saying we have to look to the children. We don't have to look to the children. The children are repeating what they're being told. If they're told the wrong information, they will regurgitate the wrong information. At the moment, Greta, I think, has 2 honorary PhDs. I think she's been nominated for a Nobel Prize, and I heard she got $1 million or something. I'm not sure. But this is too much for a child. It is silly of the whole society to be looking to children and saying children are the answer. They're not. They are repeating what we say. If we say the wrong thing, they'll repeat the wrong thing. So it's completely wrong.
Exactly. Look, I think that we're going to finish up now. Time, it just flies when we speak because there's so much information that you all have. I might have to do an individual interview with each of you. I think that might be another way forward. But I think what has happened now is that the game is up. there's such a global awakening going on, and people no longer buy this nonsense and all the other nonsense that they're being fed. So the cabal have gone into overdrive to try and get this over the line now, and that's why, you know, they're coming out with nonsense about cannibalism, and maybe cannibalism is the future, and people just don't buy this. So okay, now we're going to finish up, but I just want to, you know, the things that really do frighten people in terms of the polar bears, and that just a position on the polar bears, they're fine.
Specifically on the polar bears, there are 19 populations of polar bears in the world at the moment. There's one population that's decreasing, there's 6 that's increasing, but the others are reasonably stable. But in the 1960s, 70s, it was estimated that the polar bear population was probably between 5,000 and 7,000 polar bears. But the current estimates now that it could be anywhere between 30 and 60,000, and in fact they've become a huge problem. The other thing you hear about is that the Arctic is melting and the sea ice is melting, and this is causing a problem for the polar bears. That's nonsense. The polar bears need the ice to melt in order that the seals and the fish and the algae can grow, so that they have something to live on. If the Arctic was to be totally frozen over, there would be no habitat for the polar bears. They would have nowhere to get their food. It's all a nonsense. You know, it's been put out for a particular agenda. It looks good. The polar bears look good.
It's so simplistic.
It's simplistic, and it's
and the Antarctica.
It's not true. We have written a number of papers on the Arctic sea ice levels, and they're all peer-reviewed and gone through the peer review process. So the scientific community are agreeing with it. But we're told that the Arctic sea ice is melting, and it has been melting since records began in 1978. But during that interval, the Antarctic total sea ice area has been increasing. So you're only told one side of a thing for an agenda. You're told that carbon dioxide absorbs the energy from the planet. You're not told that it also radiates it out again. You're told that the
Arctic is melting, but you're not told the Antarctic is expanding.
And you're told that the sea levels are rising, but it's only.
But the other thing is probably the other one on the Arctic. Which
on the sea level.
But we'll get back to that in a second. On the Arctic, and another thing in the north that you're quite frequently told is that the northern snow cover. We've written a paper which was published in March in a peer-reviewed journal
in Geoscience.
And you're told that the northern hemisphere snow rate has been declining in the spring, and that was true. But when we looked at it, we found that it was increasing in the winter and autumn.
There's been more snow cover in the entire northern hemisphere, because the northern hemisphere has the most data. It goes back to 1967, and it goes back to 1967, and the winter and autumn northern hemisphere snow cover has actually increased. In the computer model world that we were talking about earlier, it's decreased. In the real world, it's actually increased.
The sea levels, just the sea levels, if you could just quickly.
Just the sea levels. Look, even the IPCC here, they are saying that it's only increasing at the rate of 2 to 3 millimeters a year. We're finding that the maximum is probably about 1 to 2 millimeters a year, and it's been doing that since before the Bronze Age. It's been going at the same rate. Let's take the IPCC's estimate of 3 millimeters a year. Then you're saying it's 30 centimeters in a century. So the length of a ruler, a century. That's what we're talking of. If you're going and saying, let's build a stone wall, or a sea wall on Clontarf, which they did Fairview, to stop the sea level rise of a foot a century. What ended up happening there, and the engineers were all saying this is going to be a problem, is the biggest problem was when there is flooding, now that there's this seawall, the water can't escape out to sea.
Exactly.
So there's been an increase in flooding problems in the Clontarf area because they built this seawall to stop one
then also because
century.
And they build on floodplains, and then they wonder why housing estates get flooded.
Could I just, one of the things that I maybe isn't clear, because I do it, we are, like myself and Michael, are environmentalists. And so we're very concerned about environmental degradation and in particular pollution. When there is pollution occurring, then we need to reduce it down to minimise it as much as possible. Ironically, what we're finding is that a lot of the almost all of the main campaigns that have been promoted to try and stop climate change are actually having negative environmental impacts.
And we were speaking about
that would be a separate
wind
thing.
Turbines and all of that, solar panels, batteries.
There is a big thing. There's a new study that came out saying one of the best ways to reduce carbon dioxide.
Actually, just come in.
One of the best ways would be to plant more forest trees.
Yeah.
And that's great, and we should be having more trees, forests. We should be reforesting rather than deforesting.
I don't necessarily agree with that, Ron.
Rather than deforesting,
yes.
Reforesting.
Yes.
So restoration of forests. But a lot of the policies, most of the deforestation that's occurring at the moment, like the majority, I think we estimate it's about 60 to 70%. We're still
this
trying.
Is worldwide.
Yeah. Is actually related to poverty and to a big factor is the switch to biofuels that was promoted in the 2005, 2008 by the EU and the US, trying to reduce our carbon footprint. They said we should grow biofuels.
Yes.
And then they started.
Okay, and I want to just discuss Dorian very quickly. There's no
Dorian.
Increase in, like, this is just normal. This is not man-made.
We have written a blog post on the hurricane data.
Actually, just
but
can
also,
you be heard?
Yeah.
We have written a blog post on the hurricane data. But Kevin, have you got that thing from the IPCC?
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, if you look at
but just so this is not. This is people do not need to worry that this is any more fierce or.
Yeah. Have a look.
Read here. Just reading here.
Read out the sentence there.
Yeah. So this is. The reason we haven't written papers on this particular topic is because the scientific community is almost unanimous that there's no connection between hurricane trends.
But they're saying they are saying that Hurricane Dorian is being caused by man-made climate change.
Well, when you say
but the science. The scientific community is saying
UN,
no.
And this is the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Mm-hmm. This is their statement. They give they give confidence estimates, and they're saying that globally there is low. Yes, well, it's just to explain what they think. They say globally there is low confidence in attribution of changes in tropical cyclone activity to human influence. So they're saying it's the least likely. One of the least likely possibilities that they are considering. The IPCC is saying no. There's almost the evidence is against that.
Now, there's a lot of stuff in the IPCC that we don't agree with.
Oh, you're not. Yeah.
That yes, but you do agree with that. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll call it a day, right? Ronan, Michael, Imelda, Connolly, thank you very much. And I'm sorry that we have repeated ourselves a little bit. We've probably gone on too long, but it's so important. So maybe you could watch this in 2 stages, and we'll definitely meet again soon and deal with some of the questions maybe that people have. I just hope that your voices become much louder and louder, and you start to get a fair run in the media, so that some of this insanity is brought under control.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
You're the first person that has said that you hope my voice becomes louder and louder.
Good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.